Do violent video games really affect the outcome of a child? Change, a word that not all of us are comfortable with, are excited for, or even accepting of. However, the idea of change is inevitable. It is going to happen whether we want it to or not. How we look at the idea of change is going to determine our perspective on how this change will affect our lives. We currently live in a society where part of us feel that violent video games are affecting our children and play a role in their violent world, while others tend to ignore the research or are just uneducated on the topic. When it comes to change in technology and how it affects our children in society, we have two choices. We can allow the change to be part of our child's life, or we can step in front of the change and determine how it's going to impact and play a role on our child's life. The wonderful times when children would spend their entire free time playing with their peers in the streets, the backyards, or sports fields have mostly gone away and have been replaced by new form of technology that literally is proving to destroy the brain function and social skills. Today's children and teenagers choose to not spend their days outside making up adventurous games, playing sports against kids from other side of the block, or just exploring nature itself. Our modern day children now prefer calmer forms of entertainment, such as watching television, playing video games, or using their phones for an unlimited number of excuses. Studies have shown that although video games can contribute to a child's development, many of them, unfortunately, are extremely violent and are showing to be more harmful than not. According to the research done by the Medical News Today, the names of the most popular video games for teenagers are Call of Duty Infinite War, Battlefield 1, Grand Theft Auto, and Mortal Kombat and Outlast, just to mention a few. As you see here, this is an old PlayStation, and it's 007 and Medal of Horror Underground. My kids do not own any of the other ones that I had mentioned of above. Just the names alone should alert parents, and the warning of the violence is probably the basis of the creation of the game and should be monitored or even banned from those what is considered to be adult age, when no one longer legally has to listen to the parents. One of the biggest reasons these violent video games are so harmful is for the human brain. There's no big difference between a real life situation and an imaginary one. Even worse for children and teens who usually have a rich imagination, everything is even more intense. Virtual experience for them may feel as real as daily life. This happens due to the advancement technologies making computer graphics look extremely close to reality, and also because players take a first-person role in killing process. According to the Huntington Post, if kids would passively watch a violent game, it would have less harm in the exposure than acting as a character who makes progress through a plot by murdering people and destroying what the character's path. The passive approach to playing the game is not the intention of the game, therefore kids will become engaged quickly. With children and teens forming new brain connections daily, this becomes very scary for those working with children in the mental health field, as these kids are actually learning and memorize what is going on in their favorite games, which to them, there is no difference between real life situation and an imaginary one. Studies show this can lead to an increase of violent behavior. Violent games directly reward violent behavior. Many modern games do not simply make players kill virtual reality characters of other players online, but also grant them with scores or points for successful acts of violence. These points are usually spent on making players' character even more efficient in killing, unlocking new cruel ways of murdering, and so on. Sometimes players will even be praised directly, verbally. For an example, in many online shooters, after conducting a killing, players hear the phrase, "Nice shot," encouraging further violence. This is much worse than watching TV, as TV programs do not offer a reward directly tied to the viewer's behavior and do not praise viewers for doing something antisocial. It's scary to think that there is something that teaches violence and aggression even more so than on a TV show, and teens now can have access to these games via their phone or gaming devices at all times due to the latest advancement in technologies. According to the American Psychological Association, violent video games increase children's aggression. The number one effect is they tend to inappropriately resolve anxiety by externalizing it. So when a child has anxiety, which they do, instead of soothing themselves, calming themselves, talking about it, expressing to someone, or even expressing it emotionally by crying, which all are healthy ways to deal with anxiety, kids now tend to externalize it. They do this by attacking something. They kick a wall, they can be mean to other people, mean to a pet, say harsh things to others, and make irrational choices that could have lasting consequences. Studies show that there's an increased frequency in violence responses from children who play these kinds of video games compared to their peers with little to no exposure to the violent video games. Unfortunately, many modern games incorporate violence. Having youth play these video games are dangerous as teenagers and children usually take the first-person role in killing process and even get rewarded or praised for doing so. During the advanced analysis, I asked the younger preteen teenagers how they feel when they accomplish their violent task. All four, ages 8 through 18, described the feeling as an accomplishment, that they wanted to keep going to try to get a higher score. These expectations match a lot of what the studies are saying according to numerous studies through Psychology Today. These studies and evidence-based research is shown to lead to an increase of aggression in kids and adults. In order to stop our children from becoming one of those kids who we all say our children will never become, we need to be more aware of what children are being exposed to. This topic is a concern of mine for many reasons. Working in a school district main office, I see a lot of students being referred to the office for behavioral choices. These choices, while I'm not certain very well, can be traits that are picked up from playing a violent video game. If that is the case, then the studies are shown to be proven true. Kids exposed to violent video games tend to have aggression become a learned behavior, according to Time magazine. I don't want the students that I'm caring for each and every day to become more and more violent because they are not outside exploring and creating mind games, but instead becoming couch potatoes and becoming addicted to these violent video games. More importantly, I have 2 kids and several very close friends in the age and of preteen and teenage years. I am legitimately fearful for the safety if this violent streak is going to continue. I am not so scared for the lifestyle of my kids or for these close friends of mine, as their parents will now become aware of this hazard as I will be speaking with each of them. Where is our society going? Violence did not occur to this extent when I was in school over 25 years ago. Bullying was almost non-existent. But today, you could not pay me enough to go back to school and deal with the violence and the bullying that is occurring today. This research has allowed me to see what the violent video games are doing to our children. What kind of games are going to be out there when I have grandchildren, and what the world will be with living with them. I know the kind of environment I want my kids to be in, therefore violent video games will not be allowed in my home or played by my children. In order to ensure this does not happen when my children are out of my care, I'm going to need to educate good parents of these games and lifelong effects they can have, even on the good children. I know that I'm going to hear opposing sides to this topic. Our children are good. We have taught them and the right choices to make. I have just learned that even the good kids are influenced by these games. And these good kids that are leaders can and then lead the rest of the pack astray. Before long, we're going to have the whole society that has been brainwashed by this form of technology and violence incorporated into it. I will continue to show the facts, the studies, and even try to find the opposing side if there is one that states there is no harm to this exposure of these video games. I doubt there will be a creditable one. But no matter what, I think we can agree that the change of violence in our society has increased, and we as parents want it to end. If all parents saw the hazard of these games, would there be any limitations put on them? Would they be allowed to be a part of our children's lives? Would violence be as high as it was today? I believe that the exposure of these violent video games can impact the level of violence our society in our future.